Hi everyone. Nice to see you. Very good. Just taking you in as you come on. Old friends and people I don't know. It's kind of nice. All these are good. Hey, there's Jordan. Hi, Jordan. Good to have the musician aboard. Oh, so thank you for coming. It's nice to have company. I'd be sitting anyway, but it's really cool to have us together. So there's a joy in it, I think. There's a fierce joy in life, and I feel it in meditation. And I want to read a poem. One of you turned me onto this is Milosh, and it's a poem I didn't know, but one of the leaders, I think maybe Meredith, someone turned me onto this, but on angels. Always, and he's talking about angels, and Milosh sort of grew up in, I don't know, an old Christian world that had that sense of the rhythms of life and the belief. He said, I believe in prayer. I'm on a bridge, even if it doesn't go anywhere, even if the prayer isn't to anyone. So it was that feeling for the process, the sacredness of just doing stuff, the sacredness of a practice was deep in him. And of course, everything bad that could happen that we knew of then bad happened to his country and the people he loved. And first the Nazis, then the Stalinists, and so on. And so he spent his life in exile, but always having a feel for A, that he was a heretic and there was no religion that would really ever approve of him, and B, so that when he died, they didn't let him lie in state in the great cathedral where he was born, Vilnius, Vilnius. And so, because he was a heretic, which would have probably, it would have been nice for him to lie in state in the cathedral, but being a heretic was actually right. so, but he always had a feeling for that movement in us where we already rest in the sacred. And as soon as we begin to feel it, it, it changes everything for us. So now on angels. So he thought, well, what about angels? All was taken away from you, white dresses, wings, even existence. Yet I believe you, messengers. There where the world is turned inside out, a heavy fabric embroidered with stars and beasts, you stroll, inspecting the trustworthy seams. Short is your stay here. Now and then, at a matinal hour, if the sky is clear, in a melody repeated by a bird. Now and then, at a matins are the very first office of the day in the medieval monastery. It's a little esoteric term, but where it's just the crack of dawn. So it's like zazen. You do that. You sit into and hear the first birds. In a retreat. Now and then at a matinal hour, if the sky is clear, in a melody repeated by a bird, or in the smell of apples at the close of day when the light makes the orchards magic. They say somebody has invented you, but to me, that does not sound convincing, for the humans invented themselves as well. The voice, no doubt it is a valid proof, as it can belong only to radiant creatures, weightless and winged. After all, why not? Girdled with lightning. I have heard that voice many a time when asleep, and what is strange, I understood more or less an order or an appeal in an unearthly tongue. Day draws near, another one. Do what you can. Good last line. So this is a time when the deep meaning of not picking and choosing might be good to know. Since there's a tremendous desire to pick and choose in reality at the moment. and it's not that we have to approve of or support or, I think it's really good to find ways to make the world better, make the, you know, you can feel dark forces trying to come over the country, and it's not a bad thing to resist them. I mean, it's a good thing to resist them and find ways to resist them. But it's also true that no matter what, there's that, what Milosh calls the song repeated by a bird, the song of the eternal life, really, the song of the light that's in us. It's a great thing, and the song of the sacred. And so it's always good to both teach the children to listen for that song, to listen for the sacred, and also to realize that it can reach us no matter what shape we're in, no matter even if we're dying, we can tell that if we're dying, we can't be further away from it. So if we're living, we're not further away from it either. It's always here. So something good to know. I was talking to a friend in Australia, Zen teacher, Susan Murphy, actually, yesterday, and she said, well, and she asked me how I was, and I said, I'm happy. And I didn't really know. And she said, you seem to have a very extensive idea of happiness. And I said, well, what's your idea of happiness? And she said, well, when I'm picking wet laundry on the line and I see the shadow in the grass moving and flapping, that's happiness. I said, oh, it's like that for me too. That's Zen. You see the pure thing in the world. One of my examples is I lie down and I stop and I let the world take care of itself, so I'm not interfering, which is basically what meditation is. So, but when I go to sleep, I notice that I just lie down, I just feel the joy of it, and I laugh sometimes. So if somebody else is already there and she's, I sometimes wake her up laughing. So I fall asleep, wake Alison up laughing. So she's very tolerant about it, but it's an involuntary, so happiness is an involuntary thing. It just comes over you, and it's awakening. Happiness is a tiny sample of life is good. And also we know that it's not a long-term contract. So, Lin Ji was always saying things like, you cannot stay here. You need your passport. We'll be moving on to other places. And the deeper I go into the practice, the more that feels all right, That's good. We came and then we go. And in a way, being here was the dream, and the other thing might be real, might be the deepest thing, So I guess I want to say, just with the political madness that's current now, is that I don't think it gets in everybody's psyche, and it's not something you can ignore, And also, it's hard to know how to, what to do about things. So there's an Australian story about I think a Mr. Jones who saw the Second World War coming and realized it was going to engulf places that you'd never imagine, like Australia, and Indonesia and places like that, Philippines, and so he decided to go for safety to a small island in the Pacific called Guadalcanal to wait out the war. And it turned out to have some of the fiercest fighting of the whole war. And so that kind of thing is very is a very true thing about human decision making and ability to predict things. So we're where we are, and I think it's good to do what you can to bring about a vision of joy and tolerance and peace in the world. I think it's incredibly important. I have a whole bunch of Asian friends who are getting insulted in the streets and abused. And I don't think that's insignificant. I think that's an important thing to take notice of, and any way we can like change that and stop that is a good thing, you know. Black friends too, but they're kind of used to it, you know. And so we have to do that, and at the same time we have to live the life in which we are already connected and friendly and loving right now. We don't get to do that after we've achieved, you know, success in the outer world. The inner world just, it's always here for us, and it's a really deep, good thing to be involved in. And I've said this a lot, but I remembered really understanding that in some deeper way. I think I'd always known that inner life was somehow important because, you know, the spiritual advantages of a difficult childhood, you know. so the virtues of a difficult childhood. One of them is, spirituality, the sacred, yes. So I'd known that, but I didn't really know how it applied in the world. And when I was working but I was always, long ago now, I was always touched by the plight of the indigenous people in Australia because I'd grown up with them and they were not well treated, and they were very I was, you know, had close friends and so on, and but even if I hadn't had close friends, it was an important thing. And I remember so I became a lobbyist. I thought, well, one of the things I can do is I can talk to the people in power, the senators and so on. And so I did that sort of thing. I went and was a lobbyist for the land rights causes. And I remember how I realized that, of course, when you're fighting for a good cause, everybody fights with each other at the same time, and you see that everywhere. You know, and in those days, all our business was done in hotels, so in pubs, you know, so because that was a gathering place in Australia. And then everybody was drinking, and then they'd drink more, and then everybody would disagree with each other, and so on. And then sometimes it'd be a fight, you know, and so I realized that meditation was part of what I was doing. It wasn't something different from what I was doing. I had to be at peace during that work in the pub. You know, when people were fighting about things, or even physically fighting, that I had to be at peace because if I wanted to help, I had to go there. That's where things needed help. You know? So it wasn't somewhere else where I was completely insulated. You know, like I love being out in the bush, but which is good too. So I think that's what we're all doing. We're having peace in our hearts and as much as we can, and because it's sort of your life that you must have. So, and I like Susan's thing about hanging up the laundry. Anna Sewell, the great Polish poet, you know, who Milosz made famous here because he went back to Poland when it became possible for him to do after the fall of the Berlin Wall, and found out this great poet was still alive, and he had no idea, you know, and so he helped get her published, translated and things. But she has a wonderful thing about going to sleep where I roll around as if in a great sleeping bag, and then I fall down to the bottom of happiness. So happiness was available for her every day of her life in the midst of, you know, the wars and things like that. And so just to say that the beauty of the beauty of this, it's always here, it's never not here. And so I don't know, what would be, just look at anything in the room. Like I'm looking at a bookshelf that's got this sort of corners to it right now, and I realize how fond I am of corners. so and how perfectly the wall is upright, and the sound of a car just went by, and how it comes out of eternity and goes back again. So those things, when we were just in a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and a week ago really, and retreat just silences the noise. It doesn't silence, the noise sort of falls out of the mind a bit more. And so then you'll notice that, the Hakuin said, the pure land is here, the sacred is always here. So, and so then here's a very mystical version of it, which is, famous poem by Su Tung Po, who's a song later than the great classical period of Chinese poetry. And he was, the only way this poem was found, it was in the records of a temple where he stayed overnight and he had an awakening experience, and he wrote this poem and gave the copy to the abbot, and it was filed away in the temple records, the way temples file everything, And nobody knew about this poem until somebody found it in there. The sound of the stream is his long, broad tongue, as the Buddha's long. The sound of the stream is his long, broad tongue. The shapes of the mountains, his body. Tonight I've understood 84,000 verses. How will I recite them tomorrow? The sound of the stream is his long, broad tongue. The shapes of the mountains, his body. This evening has 84,000 verses. How will I recite them tomorrow? So, and that was a time of civil war, chaos, the usual. But somebody was meditating, and the poet stopped through and had this wonderful experience and wrote it down and gave it to the abbot, who filed it away, and much, much later it appeared and still encouraging people, became famous long after his death. This is a Constantine Cavafy, the Greek poet, Alexandrian Greek poet. There's a poem of his called Anna Dalasini. In the royal decree that Alexios Komnenos put out especially to honor his mother, the very intelligent lady Anna Dalasini, noteworthy in both her works and her manners. Much is said in praise of her. Here let me offer one phrase only. A phrase that is beautiful, sublime. She never uttered those cold words, mine or yours. She never uttered those cold words, mine or yours. Naomi Shihab Nye came on to the John Joseph, his Monday night, last Monday, and she's in the meditation world, but she's a sort of force of nature and always producing things and poems, and anything she sees becomes a poem. And conversation, she's sitting on an airplane, and the woman next to her hands her baby for a minute and disappears for an hour, and so that becomes a poem. And the woman then comes back like completely dressed they're going to Saudi Arabia completely, an hour later, dressed, she's washed her hair in the bath, comes back wearing a hijab and takes her baby back, and no words were spoken. It seemed like, and Naomi felt like, can I keep the baby? But so the little thing, she's very attuned to those small things that we all experience in life. And so she had a thing about, her English teacher gave her a writing assignment, become a kitchen implement in 2 descriptive paragraphs. And she chose the sifter, the flour sifter. So I'll read you, those of you on the program will have heard it from her, but I'll read it to you anyway. When our English teacher gave us our first writing assignment of the year, become a kitchen implement in 2 descriptive paragraphs. I did not think butcher knife or frying pan. I thought immediately of a soft flour showering through the little holes. of the sifter, through the little holes of the sifter, and the sifter's pleasing circular swishing sound, and wrote it down. Rhoda became a teaspoon, Roberto a funnel, Jim a muffin tin, and Forrest a soup pot. We read our paragraphs out loud. Abby was a blender. Everyone laughed and acted giddy, but the more we thought about it, we were all everything in the whole kitchen. Drawers and drainers, singing teapot and grapefruit spoon with serrated edges. We were all the empty cup, the tray. This, said our teacher, is the beauty of metaphor. It opens doors. What I could not know then was how being a sifter would help me all year long. When bad days came, I would close my eyes and feel them passing through the tiny holes. When good days came, I would try to contain them gently, the way flour remains in the sifter until you turn the handle. Time, I was a sweet sifter in time, and no one ever knew. So I like the poem because it's so domestic, and that's one of her gifts, right? She said she couldn't imagine writing science fiction because there's so much in front of her. She can't get beyond it to get into the future or things like that. Can't get beyond the kitchen. The story I liked about it and how then I began to remember my kitchen, and it was a worn pine kitchen table that my great-grandmother had owned, just a pine table full of the scars of use. And actually, when my parents died, I asked my sister for it, but nobody could work out how to ship it to me. So my sister, practical soul, said, buy one in America. So I didn't. I could have brought it about, but it was too much hassle. But so there's something about the objects of our lives, but I think perhaps the point of this story is that when Naomi went to India to teach kids, and she loves to. That's her thing. She teaches kids, and the teacher in India who brought her, she went to a school, and the teacher had told them about her and told them about this poem. And as she approached the school, these kids ran out holding poems about kitchen implements. Read mine, read mine. So the Dharma continued. As you see these little Indian kids rushing out with their poem about whatever it was in their kitchen. And so you can tell that the sacred is present because it evokes your own life and what was in your kitchen and what was in your childhood kitchen or what's in your kitchen now, and how a kitchen is like the mind. You bang about in it, and there's always something sacred in it. And the other thing she said, which I think is nice, and is about the not picking and choosing thing. The great way is not difficult if you just don't pick and choose. She said she wanted to live a big life. And we don't know what that meant to a child, but for her that meant whenever she was invited somewhere, she'd just go. And whenever she was invited to teach children particularly, she would just do it. And she was teaching classes in Uvalde, so she was very affected by the massacre in Texas, and very, affected by the racism now, that's everywhere because she's, half Middle Eastern, So, but we're in it, and meanwhile we have kitchen implements to talk about too, and the things that draw people together. When I lived with some Indigenous people in Australia, in the morning you'd sort of wake up and it'd be dawn, and you'd roll out if you're wherever you're sleeping, your tent or the platform you're on, and you look at, well, what are the birds up to today? What kind of day is this? What are there? Can you see dolphins off the beach? What is the state of the tide? And somehow that was all inside your heart, inside your being. And so there's something to be said for noticing just the metaphor that you're in, because the psyche does anyway. And so like her with the sifter accompanying her all that hard year as a child, so keeping her there, so it's nice. And the fact that happiness is not something, the conversation with happiness sort of ran off into somewhere else the way such conversations do, but the conversation I was having with my friend yesterday and was about how, like, she just goes to pin the clothes on the line and she notices happiness is already with her. And it's not when she gets through the kitchen task or anything. It's in the middle of things. It's here already. When you're... and so when you're meditating, it's here already. It's not when you get your meditation done and check off, I did a good job today. That was good for me, It's nothing to do with that, really. It's the here-ness. And so then you'll find that the happiness just comes on you unawares, and you can't say there's a good reason for it, except you're not interfering with being. You're not interfering with the Tao, with the current of things. The great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. Without yearning or loathing, the way is clear. Without love or hate, that is, the way is clear to see the way with your own eyes. You can stop agreeing and disagreeing. The battle of liking and disliking is the disease of the mind. Misunderstanding the great victory. People work hard for peace. Sorry, misunderstanding the great mystery. People work hard for peace. Mind is perfect. The heart and mind are perfect, like vast space. Nothing is lacking and nothing is extra. Just selecting and rejecting make it seem otherwise. Don't chase after things. Don't dwell passively on quiet emptiness. Be at peace in the absolute oneness of things, and confusion vanishes all by itself. So there you are. Sounds easy. Let's try it. The sound of the temple bell. The temple bell comes to us. And for the moment here it is our life, our whole life, and then we realize everything has that quality and capacity. The sound of the temple bell. So the great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. So you can just hang out with that, You can think it through, but that probably won't help. You can not think it through, but that probably won't help. The truth is, the great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. And just let it, just let yourself keep company with it, I guess, really. You don't have to do anything very much about it. The great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. The great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. You can also say, if you just avoid picking and choosing, but in fact, You are the great way, so you can skip the if you. Just avoids picking and choosing, and so here we are. Not reaching for anything, not pushing anything away, not finding anything at fault in the mind. You can tell already kindness and happiness arise. The great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. You can tell there's nothing for the moment. It's sufficient, it's complete. There's nothing. The mind does things, but you don't need to do anything about that. The mind does things, but it just thinks that's its job. The great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. So to be very patient with yourself and your journey, that you're on the journey right now, and so you can't be in the wrong place. And gradually you notice, wait, I'm always on that damn journey. And so I'm never in the wrong place. Why wasn't I informed earlier? Here we are. And so your life has not had, it hasn't been a mistake. Everything is for you. Everything is attuned for you. So you can relax a bit about it and smile and enjoy yourself. Appreciate other people. Appreciate yourself. The great way, the great way, the great way. Not difficult, not difficult, not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. It just avoids picking and choosing. It just avoids picking and choosing. The great life is not difficult. It's just yours. It's here. The nice thing about Zazen is there's nothing happening. This is it. So to hold ourselves, to allow, to turn the horse's head towards this is it, is a great, and sometimes it requires a bit of discipline, but it's a wonderful thing. This is it. This is it already without me putting anything on Insta about it. It's just already it. Nothing is required except to be here. And even if you're not here, that's going to be good enough. That's your here. And gradually it becomes richer and more profound. Very good. The Great Way is not difficult. I want to read a Louis Gluck poem, which is kind of in that territory. And she's a marvelous poet, so it's always worth spending time with her. Abundance. A cool wind blows on summer evenings, stirring the wheat. The wheat bends, the leaves of the peach trees rustle in the night ahead. In the dark, a boy's crossing the field. For the first time he's touched a girl, so he walks home a man with a man's hungers. Slowly the fruit ripens, baskets and baskets from a single tree, so some rots every year, and for a few weeks there's too much. Before and after nothing. Between the rows of wheat you can see the mice flashing and scurrying across the earth, though the wheat towers above them, churning as the summer wind blows. The moon is full. A strange sound comes from the field, maybe the wind, but for the mice it's a night like any summer night. Fruit and grain, a time of abundance. Nobody dies, nobody goes hungry, no sound except the roar of the wheat. Little piece of mice pure land. The animals too have a piece of the true nature. And I think that's the thing, like you're putting the washing on the line and you see the shadow and you realize everything's perfect, just like that. And then you put your hands down and you look around, everything's perfect again, just like that. You wake up and there are the birds and the dawn and the sound of cars. Alison, do you have anything you want to say?
I was just thinking of the Malosh poem that you read. It's just so lovely to hear, to have you read poetry to us. It's such a treat on a Sunday morning. And before you read the poem, you said something about that we already rest in the sacred. And I think that's the quality of meditation. We don't have to make our way to the sacred, but it's a kind of falling into and like when you fall into bed at night, this sort of, we already rest in the sacred. And the line in his poem that said, in a melody repeated by a bird. I was speaking to a woman last Friday who wants to begin some kind of meditation practice. She's in, her life is the usual chaos of someone with a couple of young kids and a full-time job and COVID on top of everything. And so I asked her to describe what kind of practice she actually had right now. And she thought about it for a minute and she said, well, I actually don't have any formal meditation practice. I just don't have any time for it. Even 5 minutes I don't seem to have. But what I do every day, and often several times in a day, is I just go outside and I listen to the birds. And I think she is listening to the melody repeated by a bird, that sacred quality. And I love the last line of that poem, do what you can. And that's what she can do right now, is to take 2 minutes or 3 minutes and listen to the birds singing her koan to her. That's all.
Thanks. Doing what you can turns out to be enough. And more than enough. I, this is going on a bit long, but You told me a great story about this. You sort of saved this hummingbird a while ago that had its wing was dislocated, and you stood. All you did was stand by the feeder and protect it from other hummingbirds like were, you know, eating its lunch sort of thing. And then you had another interaction, probably with the same hummingbird. You keep having these interactions. Could you say something about that? Because I like interspecies communication because it was we're all in the same ferry boat together.
Yes. Well, yesterday I was out working in the garden and I was pruning the apricot tree back a bit. And I was holding one of the branches just about to clip it. And there was some penstemon growing right at my feet, some pink penstemon. And the hummingbird came and was feeding on the penstemon. And all the hummingbirds have gone from our yard except for two males who have these flashing chests, you know. But this one was a female, and there's no other females around. And the hummingbird was feeding on the penstemon. I was watching it, and I'm holding the branch, trying not to scare it away. And then the hummingbird comes and lands about 8 inches from me on the branch, and just looks at me and sits there for a really long time. And I had this feeling like if I could just hold out my finger, it would come and land on it. And I don't know if it was the same hummingbird, but it looked a lot like it.
Okay, thanks. John Joseph.
I too really love how, the point that you make about how the sacred is not separate from the common or even the mundane, but it's not even that separate. To say that kind of is too much. It's almost like the sacred needs the mundane, the common, to show itself. And this Linji, the Linji quote about how if you love the sacred and you revile or hate the secular, then you'll for always be bobbing up and down in the sea of birth and death. And if you're always making this distinction between the sacred and the secular, um, bobbing up in the sea of birth and death. Yeah. So I enjoyed that point. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Uh, Sarah Bender is on. Do you have anything to say? I want to get on. I don't have too long, but I'd like to hear something from you if you have something.
Thank you. Yeah, I've just been um, soaking in the morning with delight, and the hummingbird story reminded me that I had a visit a couple of days ago. I've been in this house for 38 years, and for the first time in my dining room, there was a little snake, and it was about, a couple feet long, very slim, and I couldn't tell what kind of a snake it was. It was just lying there straight, and I thought, I have no idea how this snake got into the house, but it probably doesn't want to stay here. And there's not much to eat in here, and so I went in the garage and found among the many boxes a box that would probably be good enough, and put it down in front of the snake and sort of rustled a little bit behind and it just slid in their magical magical way into the box, and so I was able to carry it outside, but it just felt like happiness.
Thank you. Happiness is a snake in your living room. Uh, the other person I wanted to talk, John Bennett. Do you have anything to say? You're here somewhere. I've got to find you. Ah, here you are.
I am really noticing that if I can occasionally stop picking and choosing, even for a few minutes, all kinds of things rise up around me. Um, the vastness that's always here, happiness, the peaceful mind that could allow me to actually go out and maybe do good in the world, maybe. Um, it's it's really remarkable. It really is the sacred that's always with us that I am usually too busy to notice, but when I slow down and allow things to settle, it becomes so obvious and so apparent. And I always ask myself, why don't I do this more often? And that, of course, is I guess to the extent there's any work to be done, that's the work I'm trying to do. Although I realize it's not work at all. It's just letting go and being with it. Anyway.
Thanks. Yeah, I love that thing that happens to me in retreat, in session. For everybody, we just a bunch of us, including John, just did a week long, and where I don't really. It doesn't matter whether I try to improve my mind or don't. Gradually, things fall out of my mind. It becomes more translucent, and I realize it's beyond my efforts. It's like that hummingbird or the snake, and I like that. I like that. So thank you. Yeah. So let's have a bit more sitting, I think. The sound of the temple bell. One of the great koans, ancient koans, is what is this? What is this? The great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. The great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. One of my friends asked me, where do the questions come from? That was her question. And where does music come from? And where does it go? The great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing. The great way. The great way is right here. There's nowhere we need to go. We're here. The great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. And we keep turning towards a great koan and making sense of it and realizing, hang on, it's deeper yet. And then we hear, and then we hear, and then we hear. And finally, everywhere we go, it's here. Welcome to here. The great way is not difficult. When you notice a couple of people are saying questions and sort of very intellectual questions about this, and they're real questions. And so, what do you? It's not about not. Great way is not difficult. Just avoids picking and choosing. People who did these koans lived in the midst of much more violent times than we have, And so there you have it. And it's not about you not caring or not doing anything or something like that. So if you rule that out, it's about the nature of your heart-mind. And you notice how much you object to things and how much you do impression management and how much you grasp at things and how much you argue and explain yourself, I notice every time I explain myself, if I listen to myself, I'm kind of annoying. This is why I did that. You just don't understand. How dare you bring this? And so koans will confuse you because the mind, in a way, confusion is a beginning step in the practice, If you're confused, you're letting go of everything you're certain about. And then the immediate impulse is then I'll get another certainty and grab hold of that, but then the koan keeps stripping that away. So I think that's probably why this koan appears so much in the old classic Blue Cliff record, It's sort of annoying and confusing. And the teacher said, as soon as I say, great way is not difficult, it just avoids picking and choosing, you'll think, wow, that's clear. Or you'll think, hang on, isn't that picking and choosing? And he said, but I don't depend on certainty. I don't live by clarity. Do you have the courage to live like this? I do not depend on clarity. Do you have the courage to live like this? So if you're uncertain and don't know what to do, a gate might open. And you cannot predict where you will go yet until it opens. So as the gate that opens, it leads us, it connects us to the great mystery. And you already know you won't be able to figure that out inside. I don't know. I studied a lot of Western philosophy, and I think it's kind of really interesting and kind of getting there. But, I couldn't get out of that without meditation, So that's all I'm saying. So the great way is not difficult. It just avoids picking and choosing. And you'll feel the way your mind narrows when something comes up in your mind, you seize on it and say, but what about? Or your mind, but what about's one of the great narrowing statements. And that's all right. But then you notice it's not about whether you're right in some outer world. It's about, are we open inside? Are we connecting? Do we understand the greatness of the mystery? Can we step into it at any moment? So like that. So here I am explaining how you shouldn't explain things, you know. Amaryllis, let's go. We have the 4 vowels. Amaryllis, we can't have you because you're, unless you can do something about your microphone, because you're giving. Did somebody mute themselves? Somebody got unmuted. Try again, Amaryllis. I'd like to hear the music we're going out on, because. Let's try Jordan.
Wow.
No picking and choosing. It's not you, Amaryllis, because you're muted, so I don't know. Do you know what's going on, Jordan? Try again. Oh, just try singing.
I think it was Amaryllis.
Yeah. See, we're picking and choosing. We like that better. That's good. Thank you, Jordan. Really. Your singing just always, oh, thank you. I don't know who that is. Maybe it's me, you know. So, all good wishes. The answer is practice. Do your Zazen, and the koan will open itself. See, that's the answer. You're not going to think your way through it the way people are trying to online here, on the chat here. But good luck with that if you do. And the other thing is, you know, there's a kind of, you can tell when your heart's at peace and you're loving. That's an important clue, whether you're in the Dharma. if you want to support us, we like keeping our doors open and making payroll. So pacificzen.org, you can give us a donation. See, I'm getting good at this. I used to always be so phobic about asking for money. Bill Ross is nodding. He's one of my coaches. So, and and we just love doing this. I feel such love for you coming into the temple. It's so nice. Thank you. And we do it together. It's got a resonance and a magic when we do it together. So thank you very much. And next week I'm here on the 16th, which is a Saturday. Tess Beasley and I will be doing something on dreams and koans, which will be kind of fun. That's a Saturday. And then the Sunday it will still be happening here. So, okay. Much love for the long weekend, and we'll see you next week.